Jujutsu Kaisen has bad writing. The amount of times that I see this statement be made in my comments in Twitter, or even with people in general in real life, such as my own brother, it's been going around a lot, and actually lately it's been being said more frequently than ever right now. But is JJK actually badly written? Are there any merits to the criticism? Or is it all just a bunch of nonsense? Well, there are a lot of points that I'm going to be talking about today, such as how the Woundcast are treated, how season 1 went, the week-to-week effect, Gege being vague, the power scaling, and even all the JJK plot holes and inconsistencies. I'll be going over all of that in today's video. Trust me, whether you agree or disagree with the title, you're going to want to watch the whole video first. And hey, if you're a fan of JJK, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I have a lot of JJK content on the channel and a lot more coming, so if you're a Jujutsu Kaisen fan, you are not going to regret it. And leave a like too. Thanks if you did. Okay, so we all know that Maki and Toji's heavenly restriction allows them to go undetected during battle. It's quite a powerful ability. But what if I told you just like them, you could browse the internet undetected too, just like a heavily restricted user? Well, now you can thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark VPN. And before I even start the sponsor, I just want to clarify for full transparency. I've been using Surfshark for 10 months already. It's actually why I chose them as a sponsor. It really does make me feel a lot better knowing I can guarantee that everything I'm saying is definitely true, but the VPN itself is actually crazy. Okay, so some of you may be asking, what is Surfshark and what does it do? Well, it's a VPN. A VPN keeps you safe and private by covering up everything you do online. When using Surfshark, if your device connects to the internet, all of that information is encrypted. Anyone who tries to see your activity and what websites you're browsing won't be able to see what you're doing or where you're doing it at all. It's actually what I use all the time while I'm living in my university dorm. Listen, as anime fans, there are certain websites who really don't want people to know that we're on, and a VPN keeps your online data private, especially when you go to these sketchy anime websites. It'll keep all of your information private and secure. It really is like your Maki and Toji. You're completely protected and you can't be detected at all. And it extends to public Wi-Fi too. If you go to cafes or use any sort of public Wi-Fi frequently, Surfshark will keep you safe even on unknown public networks. It encrypts your online data and keeps you safe on public Wi-Fi. I actually use it constantly whenever I go to Costa or Starbucks to study. It really does make me feel a lot better knowing that all my passwords and information is safe while I'm using the cafe internet. And on top of all of these, with Surfshark VPN, you can change the location of your device so you can use any of the 3,200 servers in over 100 countries to browse part of the internet you couldn't access before. And the one subscription that you make, you can use for unlimited devices. So it's like how I use Surfshark VPN on my phone, laptop, on my father's laptop and his phone, as well as my sister's MacBook. This is all happening with one subscription. So if you're interested, use the link in the description and use code KAIO to get 83% off of your Surfshark VPN subscription and 3 extra months for free. It's a great deal, and trust me, it's well worth using a VPN to keep yourself safe if you don't have one yet. Alright, now let's get into the video. First thing I'm going to start off with is season 1. Now, a lot of the people say JJK is written very plainly, it's very boring, or that it's just too average and too shonen-y. And the reason people say this is because they've only seen season 1 of the anime. And listen, I'm not going to disagree with people who say this, because yes, like every single shonen that has ever existed, they all start off normally and plainly. So a lot of people aren't actually aware of this, but shonen authors don't actually want to start off their series like a shonen. But the reason they do is to actually build up popularity and to build up a strong fan base, and it's highly recommended that they do this by their editors at Shueisha. And the reason it's recommended is because, hey, it actually works. I mean, a good example is actually Black Clover. The reason Black Clover starts off and is very, very shonen-y isn't because the author himself wanted it. He himself has written stories before that are very unique and very creative, but none of them even did as close to as good as Black Clover. And that's actually because he was recommended by his editors to make Black Clover very cookie cutter. And that's the case with every single great shonen. They all start off like this. Even one of the greatest of all time, Hunter x Hunter, it starts off very cookie cutter. Does it mean any of these series are bad? No. Actually, it's great that they start off like this because it can actually reel in a lot of the mainstream audience and create a massive fan base to begin with. And then of course, as the series progresses, all these series later evolve and take their own shape and create their own identity. And this is what we've seen with JJK, where everything from Shibuya and onwards is absolutely crazy, unique, and just insanely different from anything you've ever seen. But of course, a lot of the normal fans who've only seen season 1 say, oh, JJK, that's just such an average shonen. It's so plain, it's so mild. And again, it's because they've only seen season 1. And a lot of the people who say this, after they see Shibuya, I will be surprised to see if anyone is still saying this after that comes out in season 2. And it's just like the Culling game. The Culling game is such an insanely unique art. The idea itself is so creative, where it has actually never been done before. And of course, we see in Shibuya the turn that takes. It's definitely by no means a standard shonen. So yeah, that should address the first batch of people who say JJK is badly written or is average. Most of the people who say that have just seen season 1. Now, if we actually talk about the manga, it's really interesting because this is something that I like to call the week-to-week effect. I don't know if it has an actual name. I've been preaching this since I've actually been making JJK videos for the past 8-9 months. And it's a case where people will generally actually hate the manga or whatever they're reading week to week and criticize it heavily. And I just mean so heavily because it's all happening in the moment and because they only have access from chapter to chapter. Again, these stories are planned out and written to actually be read from volume to volume, and in some cases even as a whole story. But the issue is when these things happen week to week, people don't see the whole picture at all and they judge it way too early. And especially especially, I'll get into this later, people get very impatient with what's going on. And now to use some examples from JJK. When the Hakari vs Kashimo fight was happening week to week, the amount of people that said it was boring or it was repetitive, it was actually insane how many people were saying that, and they just wanted the fight to be wrapped up. And I specifically know people IRL and online who actually dropped the series during this fight because they said it was just too boring. And I want to remind you, this is the Hakari vs Kashima fight, which is now looked back on as one of the greatest fights in JJK. And another example is the Megami vs Reggie fight. A lot of people were saying the fight wasn't intense enough or it was just lame. And now when people look back at it, it has such a crazy climax with the domain expansion and the house and everything. Everyone loves it looking back. And there's even Sakurajima as well, where that got so much hate as it was happening week to week, even actually a bit more than the Kashimo vs Akari fight. But now when people look back on it, people are saying it's an amazing arc because of everything it does for Maki and all the great character moments from it. And we are actually seeing this with the Yorozu fight. I am not even kidding. When I go to my timeline, the vast majority of people on Twitter are saying this is boring, this is lame, that this fight really sucks. I want to remind you that we are seeing one of the strongest sorcerers in the Heian era fight Sukuna, Ryomen Sukuna, with the 10 Shadows technique, and we are getting to see Sukuna use the 10 Shadows technique to its full capabilities, as well as getting crazy lore drops from the Heian era. And I want to remind you, people are saying this is boring, that Gege has fumbled, and these tweets are not only happening in mass, but they're getting hundreds to thousands of likes. That's how common of an opinion this is, which is exactly what was happening with all of the other Culling game fights. It's actually not surprising. And again, I'm not saying the fight is going to end off great, I'm just saying people are actually judging it so badly already. And it's always the same people I see on my timeline who just switch up like crazy. The flip-flopping is insane, where all the people who said all of these arcs and fights sucked week to week, the exact same people, when they look back on the arcs, they'll be saying, oh wow, that was such a great time in the series, that was such a great fight, I love that fight so much. It's shameless. People actually aren't even embarrassed about this, and it really goes to show you that JJK fans really are spoiled because Gege drops so many amazing fights and so many bangers. If any of you remember when Mahito versus Yuji and Todo was happening week to week, people were really fed up with that fight. People were not happy at all with what was going on. People were saying it was too slow paced, it was pointless, Shibuya was rushed. There were a lot of people who were not satisfied with Shibuya week to week. And it's really weird because the Mahito versus Yuji fight is a legendary fight. It's one of the greatest fights, you could even argue, in shonen. At least it's a top tier fight in shonen of all time. But when it's happening week to week, people are crying and saying that they didn't like it or they didn't want it. Week to week, people always are far more critical and are far more, I guess let's just say, upset over what's going on week to week. It's always been like this since as long as I've been reading JJK, which has actually been since chapter 1. This has always been the case. And I'm just looking at these same people, I'm saying, wow, you were absolutely shitting on this when it was happening week to week. What is going on? So yeah, week to week effect, that is a very, very real thing, and people flip-flop so hard. People are completely shameless when they do this. It's genuinely hilarious. Another thing is the poor treatment of women, and I want to say that with quotes. One thing that can't be argued is JJK has a great female cast. All of the women written in JJK are actually very well written and far better written than I can guarantee the majority are shown. It's not even close. But the issue that people have with it is not how they're written, but what happens to them and how the arcs end. And what I mean by this is them dying a lot. Nobita, who's potentially dead. Well, I don't think she's dead, but you know that. Hana getting bitten like a Kit Kat from Sukuna. Is she dead? We don't even know. Yuki getting donated and cut in half by Kinjaku. Mai dying for Maki. And now people don't actually care why they died, how great their deaths were written. People don't care at all about that. They just care about the fact that, oh my god, Gege is killing off all the women in his series. Gege must be misogynistic. I'm not going to get into all of that misogynistic argument because yes, if you aren't aware, there is actually a large group of people who genuinely, wholeheartedly believe Gege AKUTAMI, the author of JJK, is a misogynist. They have never met the man, they have never spoken to the man, they don't know anything about him. They are literally just judging from the fact that he's killed some women in this manga, and they have deemed him as a misogynist. That is an actual real thing, not kidding. But what a lot of people don't understand is that Gege AKUTAMI kills people relentlessly. And I mean, he does not care. Just look at my man Ryu recently. What reason did he have to kill him? Why did he kill him? There was literally no reason at all. He was just like, yeah, he's dead. And actually goes back to a recent interview Gege said where he says, once the characters have been used for the purpose of why they were written, or their purpose has been served, you will either completely bench them or he will kill them. That's actually why he kills his characters, because there's literally no use of these characters. And he said this a very long time ago, and it's still true. I mean, look at Ryu. His purpose was done with the Yuta fight, and he's like, oh yeah, I can just kill him with Sukuna. But the point that I'm trying to make is Gege does this with all of his characters, male or female. The amount of male characters that I've seen just get killed, butchered, massacred is absolutely nuts. And the thing is, Gege actually treats his characters equally. He doesn't care if you're a guy or a girl. If your purpose is done in the story, or if he just wants you to die, you're dying. It is what it is. He doesn't play favorites at all. But the thing is, because there are less female characters than male characters, when people see a lot of the female cast die, they automatically think it's just because he hates women or he's treating them poorly. When again, it's actually something he does with male characters, and it's just how he writes his story. But because the the ratio between male and female characters, which is obviously understandable because it's a shonen. Whether Gege wants to or not, he has to include more male characters because he is publishing in shonen, which shonen literally means young boy or young teens. The main shonen demographic in Japan, and I'm not saying I agree with this at all, I actually disagree with this business practice that Shueisha have, I really disagree with it, but the main audience is young teenage boys. That's who all these stories are written to. And if you remember what I said in the beginning, how they're very advised to make stories very cookie cutter in the beginning, in the same way they're actually advised to have more male characters. And I don't agree with this, but it's just the reality of how it is. Out of Gege's hands, if he wants to publish for Jump, it's what he has to do. But because the ratio of male and female characters obviously is disproportionate, and when he kills them all equally, people are going to be upset when they see a lot of the women and girls in the cast in the series die. And the conclusion that they come to is, 1, Gege is a misogynist, and 2, the entire female cast in JJK is badly written. When again, they are actually very well written. It's just that he decides to kill them. Because he decided to kill them, it doesn't mean all of a sudden the writing that they had before is bad. I mean, you could argue maybe they had more potential, they had more character arcs, but that's actually a criticism of Gege overall. That's not something you should be saying he does only to the women character, that's something you should be saying he does to all of the characters in JJK, because again, this guy is an absolute menace to society of how he slaughters the males in this series. Where if you actually look at the character's death, there are a lot more male deaths, it's not even comparable. But people like to cherry pick and only look at a lot of the women dying and not just characters dying overall, and they just equate it to he actually hates women or all the women are written poorly. You can have your opinion, that's fine. If you do believe that, more power to you. You know, it's not like everyone's gonna agree on all these things, but personally, I disagree with the take that Gege is a misogynist and he writes women badly. That's just me. Another big thing is Gege is just so vague in the series. He never explains anything. A lot of the things we are kept completely in the dark about. And I don't actually think this is bad writing, but what this leads to is because he purposely leaves things very unclear or vague for the readers to decide, which is great. People like me who are YouTubers, we can make a lot of theories, a lot of power scaling because things are very close, so you don't know things for sure. But the issue is that this creates a lot of strong differing opinions in the fan base where a lot of people believe two very different things, and you can't really prove any of these things definitively, so it's just a lot of people disagreeing heavily, which leads to a lot of fight, and then a lot of people saying Gege is just too vague with it and he just needs to make things more clear, where say for Hunter x Hunter, for example, literally in the current arc, the Succession War in the Black Whale arc, we have one of the princes, Benjamin, one of his random ass soldiers. He is a complete side character and one of dozens of this guy's soldiers. We know more about this guy's ability called the Predator than we know about most of the cast in JJK, which granted I'll say Hunter x Hunter is special because it goes in too much depth. Actually, it goes in extreme depth, which I love. I love both the sides, the vague and the depth part, but it's just an example. A lot of people want it to be like Hunter x Hunter, maybe not even that far away, just actually explains the abilities of what's going on better or in far more detail than he does, rather than either not explain things at all or give very brief and very vague explanations for these abilities. The series works in general, and this actually leads to my next point, which is power scale. Because the Gege is so vague, it leaves a lot of room for power scaling, which again, great for me, but not great for the fan base because it creates a lot of discourse. One of the biggest discourses is speed. Now, this is something that's very common in all shonen and actually storytelling in general for actually well-written stories. It's the fact that authors are very well aware, can easily differentiate the difference between reaction speed, combat speed, and travel speed. Just for example, in One Piece, or Bleach, or Naruto, these characters are far faster than light. They can easily react to light speed attacks, they can dodge light itself, and they can actually just fight in terms of just combat speed far faster than light. But we can literally see in all of these stories, they themselves cannot travel, keyword travel, at light speed for long-term distance. So an example being, during the 4th Great Ninja War, Naruto had to physically run constantly throughout the battle, even though he's confirmed to be well beyond light speed. To actually travel around the battle, he actually needs to physically run a long distance, and it took a while. That's just one example of hundreds in Naruto. And in the same case of One Piece, where Luffy can easily dodge light itself. In many instances, he has dodged light, reacted to light, and actually outran light. But when it came to cases saying Dressrosa, even though he's a character who can react and fight at light speed, he himself couldn't travel at light speed, if that makes any sort of sense. Where when he needed to get to the top of the tower at Dressrosa, he couldn't just instantly get there in a second. And of course, it's the case of Bleach and just any other shonen you can even think of. These characters are well aware of the differences between reaction, combat, and travel speed. Your reaction speed will always be the fastest thing that you have. It will always be extremely quick. Your combat speed is something that will be somewhat comparable to your reaction speed, but a bit slower. And in terms of combat speed, you'll be able to physically move at light speed. So when you actually go to punch and kick and move short distances, let's say like a couple meters or something, but your travel speed is something where you can't actually move at light speed. In all the cases I just told you and in JJK 2, where someone moving at the speed of sound in terms of travel speed is actually really fast. But even in JJK, we have cases with Maki, point blank, there is a bullet right at her forehead and she catches it. She reacts and catches it right there. An even crazy example, which people always forget, is during the Culling game when the US soldiers attacked, Megumi actually dodged many assault rifle bullets and he was not on guard. He wasn't expecting to be shot when this happened. He not only reacts to the bullets, but he physically moves. He physically has dodged the bullets and has moved behind a pillar. He is that fast. So it does seem consistent where grade 1 characters can easily react to things like fast bullets like it's nothing. But then we have cases where some of the high tiers such as Curse Naoya just traveling even at speed slower than these bullets is considered to be godly, or some of the fastest that we've seen, or even the Piercing Blood considered to be supersonic. He's super fast. Again, these are all travel feats, and I will admit there are still a lot of inconsistencies in the speed where some of the things don't line up at all. I will admit that is the case, but I will say it's nowhere near as bad as people say, where some JJK YouTubers or some of the fans have said it's completely inconsistent and it makes no sense at all. I disagree. I think there's a lot of consistency to it, and if you actually look into it, it makes a lot of sense, though of course there are a bit of inconsistencies, but it is nowhere near as bad as people say it is. And of course the final point is the JJK 0 and all the plot holes that it creates. Listen, JJK 0 creates so many plot holes, so many inconsistencies, and so many contradictions, it's absolutely crazy. And I've actually mentioned a lot of them in my recent Yuta video, but just for example, Geto not insta-killing Yuta with his domain, which he definitely should have because he's special grade, or Gojo not instantly literally perception blitzing Miguel so badly that his brain hasn't realized his move, taking the black rope, throwing it away, snapping both of his hands, snapping his legs, and he could literally then move back to where he stood, and all of this should have happened by the time Miguel shouldn't even realize that Gojo has moved. That's the difference between their two speeds. Or the statement where Geto says, if I have Rika, I can kill Gojo for sure, which we know isn't the case because it's been confirmed in the daybooks that nothing in the series, including Rika, cannot kill Gojo. He is unkillable. And even Gojo himself saying, oh wow, Rika will be a tough fight, or I don't even know if I can kill Rika. When again, now that we know in the current series, not in JJK 0, Rika would stand no chance whatsoever. I don't care if it's Vengeful Curse Spirit Rika or if it's Shikigami Rika, she stands no chance at all. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of all the plot holes and inconsistencies in JJK 0. And I just want to clarify two things. One, JJK 0, the side manga or the movie, whichever one you consume, both of them are fantastic stories and are just completely great. I don't want you to be confused and think, oh, does Kyle hate these series because of this? No, I absolutely love the movie and the side manga. I think they're both amazing stories, especially if they're self-contained. But that goes into my second point. It is very understandable why it has all these inconsistencies and plot holes, because remember, JJK 0 was written and published one whole year before JJK itself came out. This story was made before the concept of domain expansions existed, before Gege had actually decided how strong Gojo really is. We knew he was the strongest, but definitely when the story was made, he made him a lot stronger. Everything in JJK 0 was conceived before JJK itself was conceived, where Gege had a whole year to actually remake and replan all of JJK and restructure it, and to actually make it how he wants. And it is a very valid excuse as to why it has all of these plot holes and inconsistencies. Of course, does it change the fact that these plot holes and inconsistencies exist? No, because JJK 0 did happen in the series. At least is there a reason as to why these all exist? Yes, there is actually a very valid reason as to why it exists, and it is still a fantastic story regardless. And of course, the headcanon argument that I go to cope is I like to just think all of JJK 0 did happen, but maybe it just happened in a different way in JJK itself. And hey, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I have a ton of JJK content just like this, a lot of analysis, and more so a lot of power scaling versus battles, what ifs, and a ton of live streams too, like live reactions to chapters, live reviews, tier lists, and a whole bunch of stuff. So if you're a fan of JJK, I definitely recommend subscribe. And whether you agree or disagree, if you do leave a like, it does help the video out a lot. And I want to clarify, there are definitely going to be things you disagree with in the video, and that's completely fine. All I ask is if explain why you disagree in the comments, just keep it nice and respectful. Please do not get toxic. And of course, thanks to all the channel members. Thank you very much, especially to the Honored One and Special Grade members, the Worst Box, Jujutsu Kaisen, and That Guy Trey, and to every other channel member. Thank you very much. It really does mean a lot, and it helps the channel out a lot, so it's much appreciated. Hey, that's all. I hope you have a great day, and take care. Goodbye.